Hi everyone, it's Melissa, and today I am going to be auditing my reading. I don't know if this will be of interest to many of you, but I certainly enjoy watching booktube videos about reading stats in general. I know at the end of the year there are a lot of booktubers who make videos on reading stats, but the impetus for this particular video was recently I made a very impromptu video regarding the Black Lives Matter movement, just to kind of share my solidarity, if you will. And something I said in the video was like, oh, I try to read broadly or read diversely. But then I kind of stopped mid-sentence and said, but do I really? Because I don't actually keep track of any of that. Just to start, I thought I would just look at the books I've read in 2020 so far to see, am I actually reading from from many different people, or am I pigeonholing myself into different categories? So I have looked at the race of the author, but not just that. I also looked at queer representation. How many men versus women authors am I reading? I've also included genre and stuff like that. Although that wasn't the impetus for the video, I really wanted to just kind of look at everything and actually maybe pay attention more to what I am reading, so that as I'm picking out books in the future, I can be more intentional. So at the time of recording, I've read 45 books. Now, when I start showing you stats, if there's any math whizzes out there who are going to add this all up in their head, the subtotals, things might not total up to 45. For example, one of the things that I'm tracking is the country of origin of the author, but I have novels that were written, for example, from an author who maybe grew up in Trinidad and Tobago but moved to the US, so I've kind of double counted some things. Also, books might fall into multiple genres, so things aren't going to equal out exactly, but this is just to give myself an idea of what I'm reading. The first thing I looked at, and which I'm the most interested in, to be honest, is the ethnicity or racial background of the author, as best as I could determine. Out of all of the books that I read, 4 were authors of Latinx authors, 4 were Indigenous, 5 were Asian, 6 were Black, and 27 were white. So I'll put the numbers up here somewhere that you can see. But I didn't realize while I was reading that I was reading so narrowly. My plan of attack here is, I'm a list maker, and I enjoy making TBRs. It's something I do very regularly, and I do plan my reading. I'm not much of a mood reader. I am occasionally, but I usually will plan a TBR and then go with that more or less. So because that's how I read anyway, it would be really easy for me while I'm making a TBR to look at the demographics of the authors. So their gender, whether there's any queer rep, their race, and when I'm making TBRs, I can make sure that those demographics aren't all the same across all of the books, unless that's the entire point of the TBR. For example, when I did Asian Readathon, the whole point was to read from Asian authors. So I'll give you the other demographics too. So I did look also at country. I really looked at books from the United States, books from Canada because that's where I live, and books from the UK because I had a feeling I was reading a lot of UK books. And then I'm just going to lump everything else into other for the purposes of like putting the numbers on the screen, but I will read out all of the other countries. But it's just in terms of like comparing numbers, it makes the most sense to compare other countries to Canada, the UK, and the US, at least for me. I've read one book from China, one from Vietnam, one from Syria, one from Japan, one from Australia, one from Trinidad and Tobago, one from Jamaica, one from Cuba, and two from Colombia, and that's going to make up my other countries category. So that's a total of 10 books from other countries. In comparison, I have read 3 from Canada, which actually I'm surprised it's as low as that. As a Canadian, I would like to read a bit more from more Canadian authors. So I'm going to try to remedy that. But comparing to the UK, I have read 14 books from the UK and 23 from the US. So again, really focused on the US and the UK and not so much from anywhere else. So I would like to read from authors from around the world. The next thing that I looked at was gender. Here I have read from 25 women and 19 men. So I feel a bit better about this, that they're a little bit more equal. But as far as I can ascertain, I have not read from any non-binary authors. So that would be something that I would like to look into as well. Now, my queer representation is really bad. So I've only read 2 books from queer authors. So one bisexual author and one trans man. And that's it. That is something that I was a bit disappointed to see. Not a bit, I was quite very disappointed to see. So I am going to also make an effort to look into some queer authors. This is going to be really easy because Jen, I forget the channel name now. I'm going to link it below, but there is a whole channel dedicated to reading queer books. And yeah, I'm going to check out those videos more carefully and choose a few to read. So the next things I looked at were more to do with the book and not the author. So fiction versus nonfiction, I read 33 fiction and 12 nonfiction. I mean, I'm happy with this. This is not something I'm really like concerned about anyway. I read nonfiction regularly, and it's not something I have to make a special effort to do. I'm always going to read nonfiction. And then looking at like the genre or like topic or whatever of books. I wasn't sure how to categorize this because some of these aren't not quite genres, but whatever. So for fictions, I have read 1 thriller, 1 dystopian, 1 that I'd call sci-fi realism, maybe, like not quite sci-fi, 1 romance, 1 crime, 2 science fiction, 2 classics, which I realize isn't a genre, 2 like magical realism, 2 adventure, 2 mystery, 2 horror, 2 literary fiction, 3 contemporary, 6 historical fiction, and 8 fantasy / fairy tale. I think there's a decent amount of variety there, so I'm pretty happy with that. And the same for my nonfiction. I've read 1 true crime, 2 like social justice nonfictions, 2 science, 2 biographies, 2 memoirs, and 4 nature. And yeah, I'm happy with that. In terms of format, I have read 1 essay collection, 2 short story collections, 3 poetry collections, and 39 books, novels, whatever. Again, I'm not like completely concerned about the breakdown there, but I am kind of surprised that I don't read more poetry because I do enjoy poetry. So I'll probably pick up a couple more collections just so I'm reading a variety of things. One format that I have not read anything ever in my whole life is graphic novels, but I don't know what's going to end up getting posted first, this video or my graphic novels video, but I'm doing a whole series called I've Never Read, where I'm going to read genres and things I've never read before, and graphic novels is one of those, so that will be something to look forward to. Yeah, and the last thing I'm tracking is kind of like the age range, I guess. Again, I don't really know what to call this. So I've read 11 middle grade books and 34 adult books, and no young adult, which I'm not, I don't really care what age range I read. I think it's kind of nonsense when adults think that children's books have no merit, or aren't worth reading. And it doesn't surprise me that I haven't read any young adult, because it's just not something that I pick up normally, but it's not purposeful that I avoid it. So yeah, I might try to pick up a few more young adults here and there this year, but overall, again, that's a category that I'm not really that concerned about. What I am really going to be doing more intentionally is looking at things like the gender of the author, what country they're from, the race of the author, and looking for queer representation as well, because those are things that I could definitely improve on. And like I said, the whole point of this is just I don't want to be reading narrowly from one type of person. Like, I don't want to read all white women, or I don't want to read all cis people or straight people. Like, I would like to read from a variety of viewpoints, and I think it's important to support authors from different experiences. Those are my reading stats and my plans to kind of be more intentional with my TBRs going forward. Any of my stats nerds out there who may have enjoyed this, please let me know what you thought in the comments below. And if you've ever like audited your reading, or kind of like done anything like this, I would be curious to know like what you found out about your own reading habits as well. As always, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope all of you are doing really well, and we'll talk soon. Take care. Bye.